2023 has been an absolutely fantastic year for Nintendo Switch owners. In my opinion, this could easily be the best year for the Nintendo Switch in terms of its software, in terms of third-party output, in terms of first-party output, and today I wanted to go over my favorite Nintendo Switch games that released in 2023. Let's do it. Hello there everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Botox Games, and yes, today we're doing my favorite Nintendo Switch games of the year of 2023. Now, I have 10 games written down here with 5 honorable mentions that we'll get to a little bit closer to the end of the video. No specific rule sets for this list, although just kind of based on my own personal tastes, it kind of ended up being that there are no remasters in this list with the exception of one major remake, so keep that in mind. And with the exception of one of these games, I have finished all of these. The last one, that is number 10, I'm actually currently playing, which is what we will start with. Number 10, Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince. Now, I am not a huge Dragon Quest fan, or at least I have never truly gotten into it. The most I've played Dragon Quest up to this point was Dragon Quest Builders 2 back in 2018, and I really enjoyed that game, but that's not really Dragon Quest, right? It has the DNA there, but it's not quite a traditional Dragon Quest game. Dragon Quest Monsters still not a traditional Dragon Quest game, although it's definitely a little bit closer. I'm a huge fan of Pokemon. However, I've never really played that many other monster catching games. The closest would be something like Shin Megami Tensei 4, which I loved on the 3DS, but I pretty much just stay in my lane when it comes to playing Pokemon. And while Dragon Quest Monsters isn't quite like Pokemon, the general idea there is there, right? You get monsters, but in this case, you're synthesizing them, you're combining them, you're not really growing attached to your specific party. Your goal is always to have the strongest party, which means sacrificing and synthesizing and combining and fusing and getting that next level monster. It took me a little bit to get really into this and get into the flow of synthesizing because at first I didn't fully realize the importance of it, but Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince, despite its technical issues, I'm really enjoying this. The story's fun, the monster designs are a lot of fun. As someone who loves Dragon Ball, of course, I mean, Akira Toriyama's general design template for the Dragon Quest franchise has always been something I'm very fond of, and honestly, I've just been having a great time going through this game. It's definitely a sleeper hit at the end of the year. I mean, it released in December, and I frankly haven't heard that many people talking about it, but I wanted to shout it out because I have been really enjoying it. I think I'm like 15 hours in, and really I see no sign of myself stopping playing at this point. I'm definitely going to finish this. This will be the first Dragon Quest game I actually finished, which is really exciting. And yeah, I'm really enjoying this game. Glad I took the chance on it because typically with something like this, you know, I see it, I'm like, oh, I kind of want that, but then I just never play it because it's hard for me to get into these longer JRPGs at times because I just don't have that kind of time. So to actually sink my teeth into Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince this late into the year and have it pop up on this list is definitely surprising for me, but also I'm very happy I did it. Number 9 on my list is actually a game that didn't come out this year on other platforms, but it did release this year finally on the Nintendo Switch, which is where I kind of waited to put most of my time into it, and that is Vampire Survivors. Vampire Survivors by Ponkel, I believe is the developer's name. This is an indie game that kind of took over Xbox Game Pass late last year, where you pretty much just stay in the center of your screen at all times, and hordes of enemies come at you just relentlessly, and you get these crazy upgrades and you combo your weapons, and it just is so satisfying. It's not the most complex game. You look at gameplay, you're like, what is this? This looks like a mobile game, right? But when you actually get into it, when you actually sink your teeth in and start going for all the different secrets, you actually try to finish the game, which I did. I did roll credits on this game. It is so satisfying. It is so satisfying to do good runs. It's kind of roguelite, I guess, because every time you die, while you're not carrying your progress forward to the next run, you are getting money, which then gives you permanent upgrades. So this is a perfect time killer. Pretty much all of my month of August went to this, as well as I think Yakuza 1 at that time was what I was playing. But Vampire Survivors, absolutely killer. The Switch version, I think they updated the other versions, but with the Switch version, they added local multiplayer as well. So I played some with my girlfriend who also really loves Vampire Survivors. And yeah, it was just an absolute blast playing through this game finally. And I haven't tried the DLC yet, but I need to get back to it because Vampire Survivors is honestly one of my favorite indie games of all time, probably. It's so good. Coming in at number 8, a game I would never have expected to love as much as I did when they first announced it, and it leaked a little bit beforehand, and that is F-Zero 99. Now, I have played F-Zero in the past. I played it on Wii U Virtual Console. That was my first exposure to F-Zero, I believe. Actually, well, I guess my actual first exposure to F-Zero would have been the F-Zero racing in Nintendo Land. But anyway, F-Zero is a franchise that I've tried to play and I just never really got into. I never really saw the direct appeal. I had played games like Wipeout, and I enjoyed Wipeout like on my Vita back in the day. But F-Zero, going back to the SNES and then later F-Zero X on N64, I never really saw the appeal. But when they announced F-Zero 99 and it was free for Switch Online members, I was like, okay, I'm going to give this a try. This game took over my life for like 3 weeks. I really enjoyed this game. It's a little sad to see how the player base has died over time, myself included. I have not played this game in quite some time, but F-Zero 99 was such a special moment for the Nintendo community where everybody was playing this game, everybody was talking about it, and while it's a little sad that the community died so fast, I did like how they actually rolled out updates for this game. I mean, within like a month or two, we pretty much had all of the content, which was nice because it just meant like, for me, someone who usually moves on from a game pretty quickly, we got all that content pretty quickly, which meant I was able to experience it. But taking the core F-Zero formula, making it very polished and control very nice, and adding a Battle Royale spin on it, where there's 99 players or 98 other players, was just such an ingenious idea. It's very hectic, but also, once you get a little bit better at it, once you really get your kind of F-Zero sea legs, I guess, you really start to understand and kind of can strategize, okay, I'm going to try to take out this guy so I can increase my boost meter, and the flow of this game is very good. Unfortunately, like I said, the player base is dying. I hope maybe they do like some sort of final update. Maybe they could do a physical release or something to revive this game. Certainly some sort of offline mode would be very nice. I think there's tutorials and stuff, but maybe some sort of offline stuff would be very nice as an update to kind of preserve this game, because this is one of my favorite games of the year. I really enjoyed it. And while I'm not currently playing it anymore, that time that I spent with it in September and early October was just... it was fantastic. I'm really glad they gave F-Zero another chance, and I hope they saw the results they were looking for when it came to this free game for Switch Online members, and maybe this will lead us to another F-Zero game in the future. Playing this, I did also go back and play F-Zero X for the first time, like really play it. Like I had played it in the past, but this time I like actually sat down and I was like, okay, I'm gonna really play this game and give it a chance, and I freaking loved it. I loved F-Zero X as well, so thanks to F-Zero 99, I am now an F-Zero fan, and I'm excited for the future of this franchise. I'm excited for that potential F-Zero GX port or remake or whatever else they decide to do in the future. Maybe they decide to do nothing, but considering we got this, I think the future is bright. And yeah, F-Zero 99 was an absolute blast, and I'm happy I played it. Coming in at number 7 is a game that started off the year. This was Nintendo's first release in 2023. Can you guess it? It's Fire Emblem Engage. I am a huge Fire Emblem fan. However, I think I'm in the minority in that while I enjoyed Three Houses from a story aspect and a character's aspect, the actual gameplay, the core strategy elements in Three Houses I thought were severely lacking. I also really don't like the idea of having to replay the game for the different routes to get the full story, to fully understand all the characters, something that Fates also did on 3DS. So when they announced Fire Emblem Engage, I was very excited because it was one story. It had a much greater focus on the strategy elements. They brought back the weapon triangle, and I really enjoyed it. I loved Fire Emblem Engage. There are clear issues with the story, and the characters probably aren't as strong as something like Three Houses. For my money, because I simply enjoyed the game more, though, I do prefer Engage's characters. I will be brutally honest. That's just because I connected to the game in a much more deeper way than I did with Three Houses, because I enjoyed the game. With Three Houses, I was just frustrated because I didn't like the design of the maps, of the gameplay, so it made it harder to connect to the characters in the story a little bit, although I can understand that the story is better anyway. I'm not here to try to tell you that Three Houses is bad. If you like Three Houses, that's completely fine, and that is the popular opinion, so I am in the minority here, I'm pretty sure. But Fire Emblem Engage, in my opinion, was the return to form I'm looking for. I don't really see an issue with bringing back old lords for the Engage mechanic. In fact, I think the Engage mechanic is one of the coolest mechanics the series has had, not necessarily from like the fan service aspect, but just mechanically and strategically. It adds for so much variety. I think the maps in this game are designed very well. I think the actual gameplay and combat, the visuals, the music, I mean, this game is beautiful. It's one of the best looking Switch games in my opinion. So for me, Fire Emblem Engage was the return to form for Fire Emblem that I was looking for. I know it didn't sell that well, so we will probably get something more akin to Three Houses in the future. But for now, I'm happy that I got what I wanted, and I look forward to the potential Fire Emblem 4 remake. And then yeah, I would assume the next mainline Fire Emblem will probably be more along the lines of Three Houses, but that's fine because I got engaged and I really enjoyed it. I still need to play the DLC, but I'll get to that eventually. Coming in at number 6, the one remake, the one exception to my little rule, I guess, if you want to call it that I put on this list, Super Mario RPG. Mario RPG is a game I had always wanted to play. I'd always heard such good things about it, but I just never did. I never had access to SNES hardware, and it was never added to Wii U Virtual Console, I believe. I think it was on Wii, but not Wii U. I never got an SNES Classic, so I never played it there, and I was just kind of waiting, I guess. At some point, like, I know I have to go back and play Earthbound. I've never played Earthbound. I'm not going to hold out for a remake for that game, most likely, and Chrono Trigger and these other games, right? But Mario RPG, it just happened to be great timing where I kind of wanted to play this game, and they announced a remake out of nowhere, and this remake is, as someone who was unfamiliar with the original source material, this remake is everything, man. They did such a good job kind of bringing this remake to modern audiences. I don't know necessarily how great of a job they did in terms of modernizing gameplay elements, because I have seen a lot of people talk about that in terms of it's still a really basic RPG with some archaic design choices, but in terms of the visual overhaul, the music, the characters, the writing, I think they killed it with this remake. I really love Mallow, specifically. Mallow is my boy. Absolutely love him, and just the characterization of Mario, Bowser, Peach, and the other characters as well, like Booster and the shark guy. I can't remember his name in this exact moment. I really love this game. I also, since I talked about how it's hard for me to get into long RPGs when we were talking about Dragon Quest Monsters, I loved that this game, it took me like 10 to 15 hours. I was in and I was out, and it was just such a nice, short, condensed, packed experience. I want more games like this. I'm okay with your long 50-hour JRPGs from time to time. I can get a couple of those in me a year maybe, but when I can sit down for the weekend and play through this entire Mario RPG and get the satisfaction that I feel from playing an RPG in 10 to 15 hours, that was just perfect for me. I already did a full video talking about this game, so go check out that as well, but I loved Mario RPG. It's one of my favorite games of the year, absolutely. Coming in at number 5, we have Pikmin 4. I don't think this really is a surprise to anybody. I adored Pikmin 4. I did my videos on it back when it came out, of course. Pikmin is a franchise that I had always tried to get into as a kid. I remember playing Pikmin, I think it was just Pikmin 1. My brother had borrowed it from a friend at high school, and then he like returned it before I could finish it. So I played a little bit of Pikmin 1, and then I played a little bit of Pikmin 2, and I never finished them. Pikmin 3 came out on Wii U. I bought it, played a little bit of it, never finished it. But when 3 Deluxe came out on the Switch, I finally went through, played that game, absolutely adored it. And then earlier this year in February, I played through Pikmin 1 and 2 for the first time, and actually finished them for the first time, I should say. And Pikmin 2 is one of my favorite games ever. I freaking adored Pikmin 2. Pikmin 1, not so much. There's a lot of issues with that game, but it was the first try, right? You know, there's some issues with the AI, I get it. But Pikmin 2, I really loved. And at that point was my favorite Pikmin game. Pikmin 4 feels like the ultimate version of Pikmin 2, where Pikmin 3 kind of feels like a successor to 1 in terms of being even more focused on the time management aspects of Pikmin. Pikmin 4 feels like a successor to Pikmin 2, and where the more prominent gameplay aspect is just taking your time and collecting things and doing things as methodically as possible and kind of just clearing out areas. That's what I love so much about Pikmin 2. Also, I think real world objects are more interesting as a collectible in this game, like in Pikmin 2. I really like that. Even though they're not like licensed in Pikmin 4, I still prefer that over the fruit or the ship parts from the other games. Pikmin 4 is also a game that just begs to be completed. I love completing games, although on Nintendo sometimes it's kind of hard to make myself do that, or kind of hard to make myself feel motivated to do that because there's no kind of trophy system. I know that's maybe a little superficial, but I love trophies on other platforms, so completing games is something I don't typically do for Nintendo, but I would like to do more of, so please give us trophies, Nintendo. But Pikmin 4 just begs to be completed with the way the game is structured. Every area you go into, it's very clear, like, okay, you're at 90%. You might as well go finish it. Go get the last collectible. Go get the last treasure. And from a polish perspective, I mean, this is one of the most polished Nintendo games I think they've released, probably, right? I don't think I ever encountered any kind of bugs or glitches. The game is beautiful from a presentation perspective. Ochi is a fantastic addition that really just kind of speeds along the gameplay progression. And while I can maybe see the criticism that this game is less focused on strategy than the other games, and I mean, that's just true. It just clearly is. There is less of a focus on getting back to the camp before dark, right? It is definitely a much more leisurely experience, right? I like that. It definitely feels more in the vein of like an action-adventure game or something, right? Instead of the more RTS-based roots of the first couple games. But I'm okay with that. I really enjoyed Pikmin 4, and yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite games of the year. Once again, I mean, at this point, we're in the top 5, so really the top 10. I mean, these are all my favorite games of the year, but Pikmin 4 really stood out this year for me. Number 4 might be a little bit of a curveball, but Theater Rhythm Final Bar Line. When this was announced in the September Direct in 2022, I was really excited. I had played Theater Rhythm Final Fantasy on the 3DS back in like 2013 or something, right? And I really enjoyed it, despite at that point having never even really sunk my teeth that deep into a Final Fantasy game. You know, I dabbled with like a Final Fantasy VII ROM on my very old PC that I had, but I'd never beaten a Final Fantasy game when I played that original version. Since then, I've played quite a few, not all of them, and there's still plenty of work to do. I've played 13, I've gotten into 15, of course, now I've played 16 some, and 7 Remake, of course. But Theater Rhythm Final Barline is, in my opinion, possibly one of the greatest rhythm games ever created. The amounts of tracks in this game, first of all, just a staggering amount of content in Theater Rhythm Final Barline. If you're a Final Fantasy fan, or if you're a fan of the Final Fantasy music, you gotta buy this game. There is no way around it. This is a fantastic value in terms of content. But just the actual gameplay loop of having your 4 heroes and leveling them up in a rhythm game setting. You know, I love Rock Band and Guitar Hero as a kid, but you're not really grinding or leveling up characters. You're just kind of playing the songs and trying to not miss any notes. And this, there's that whole extra layer of unlocking heroes and playing through the story mode in this game is just you playing through kind of a loose version of the story from the original game, but they have all the different titles kind of separated. And yeah, I really like the gameplay loop of leveling up your heroes, playing songs, going through each game, and it was just satisfying. Now, you could argue it might be kind of hard to mess up a Final Fantasy rhythm game when the Final Fantasy soundtracks are so dang good, and that is fair, but I think they did a fantastic job. I mean, I really think they pulled out all the stops to make this the best possible version of what a Final Fantasy rhythm game can be. And I have to say, while this isn't maybe necessarily a point for why I love this game so much in particular, I have to attribute something to it. I got into Final Fantasy XIV this year because I was playing through the soundtrack for it in Theater Rhythm Final Barline. I was playing the Final Fantasy XIV OST in this game, and that was what finally made me decide to take the plunge and really attempt to get into Final Fantasy XIV. And now, 200 hours later, I'm very much into Final Fantasy XIV. So while not necessarily a positive for specifically Theater Rhythm Final Barline, I do hold it in a special place a little bit because of that, because it was the game that finally got me to play Final Fantasy XIV, and I freaking love that game as well. That was one of my most played games in 2023. So shout out to Theater Rhythm Final Barline, one of my absolute favorite games of the year for sure. All right, we're in the top 3 now. Number 3, this is a DLC. So you know what it is already, but I don't care. I'm counting it. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed. This came out, I think, at a very bad time. I wish they had just straight up not released it when they did. I wish they had pushed it to June or July or August or really any other month of the year. It came out like 3 weeks before Tears of the Kingdom, in which I was doing a lot of coverage for Tears of the Kingdom. So while I didn't have the optimal experience in terms of when I was playing it, I did have to play through it a little bit quicker than I would have liked to finish it in time for Tears of the Kingdom. Future Redeemed came out at a very surprising time and just was absolutely everything I could have possibly wanted from this. I remember when I finished Xenoblade 2 back in 2018 thinking, man, for Xenoblade 3, I hope we get the Avengers Endgame. I guess I wasn't thinking that because Endgame hadn't happened. But I was thinking I hope we get a Xenoblade 3 in which Shulk and Rex and friends are all together, and that's Xenoblade 3. And then Xenoblade 3 happened, and it was my game of the year in 2022, but that wasn't what we got with the plot. We got different characters, Noah, Mio, and all those other characters, right? But with Future Redeemed, they finally realized that idea that I had back in 2018 of having Shulk and Rex come together and form and connect these two worlds, and that is everything I have ever wanted from Xenoblade. I would need to replay Future Redeemed in a maybe not so tight schedule to really sink my teeth into it and decide if I like it more than Xenoblade Chronicles 3, but I adored this DLC. I think calling it a DLC is doing it a disservice. In fact, maybe I have it a little bit low on my list. That's why I kind of want to replay it eventually and really reevaluate my feelings for it, because I really, really liked Future Redeemed, and it was pretty much everything I wanted. Only Monolith Soft can release just 30-hour games and call it like a DLC. It's so weird how they do it. I mean, it's a separate save file. It's not like in, I don't know, Horizon or something where you're doing Burning Shores and it's just on your old save file. No, it's literally just a separate game. It is essentially a sequel to Xenoblade 3, and they called it a DLC. So huge shout out to Monolith Soft for delivering what is possibly the best DLC experience I have ever had. I adored Future Redeemed, and I can't wait to see what Monolith Soft does next. And coming in at number 2 on my list, and I will say before I say the title of this game, because I think you can probably guess what my top 2 are, I am not sold on my placement of these two. I think given the day, I would probably shift them around because I adored them so much. In fact, I would even include Xenoblade 3 Future Redeemed in this kind of rotation of my favorite games of the year. These 3 games, but really these top 2 games, were so impressive to me and made such an impact. Given the day, I might change my answer, but the point remains, these are my absolute favorite games of the year. So number 2 is The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. This game, from a content creator aspect, was incredible. I really enjoyed the community I kind of made around Zelda at this time leading up to release. The hype for this game was just unreal. And then we started getting leaks, and we started seeing these things about, oh, there's this whole underground area, and we started seeing bits and pieces of the dungeons and the bosses. And then leading into release, when I got my copy, I got it a little bit early. I played a lot of this game in a very short time frame. I pretty much finished it within like a week, right? But that week of playing Tears of the Kingdom just nonstop was so much fun. Breath of the Wild is one of my favorite Switch games for sure, and Tears of the Kingdom doesn't diminish that. But Tears of the Kingdom, in my opinion, if you've seen my videos, is just Breath of the Wild, but significantly better. I mean, they pretty much improved most aspects and issues I had with Breath of the Wild. I don't want to get too much into the comparison aspect here, but the story's better, the gameplay's better, I think the abilities are much better, the dungeons are better, the bosses are better, the music that is in here I think is better. This game is the ultimate version of Breath of the Wild, and while I can understand that might be a little disappointment from the aspect like, okay, we waited 6 years and we kind of got a version of Breath of the Wild that is just a better version of Breath of the Wild. But for me, I look at it and I'm like, okay, well, Breath of the Wild was one of my favorite games ever already. We're getting an even better game. Tears of the Kingdom just absolutely blew me away. I think there are some things they can still learn, maybe be it weapon durability, maybe be it the density of the Sky Islands or the underground in terms of what kind of content you do in those areas. But Tears of the Kingdom was an absolute wild ride, and for me, completely lived up to the expectations. As someone who's not a Zelda lore master, as someone who's not really studying the Zelda timeline, which is complete BS, by the way, I really enjoyed Tears of the Kingdom. It is fantastic. And then real quick, before we get to my number 1 game of the year, I do want to go over a couple honorable mentions real quick. Disney Illusion Island. I played this with my girlfriend. Really enjoyed it. Not very difficult, maybe a little bit too long, but I did enjoy my time with Disney Illusion Island. Bayonetta Origins, Cereza and the Lost Demon, another very enjoyable game. A game I wasn't expecting to like very much, but it surprised me quite a bit. Metroid Prime Remastered. Although I have my issues with Metroid Prime, it is undeniable how good of a job Retro did at bringing this game to modern audiences. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. In fact, this one I was thinking about putting in the top 10, edging out Dragon Quest Monsters, but because it is a kind of remaster or remake of a game I had already played quite a bit of, I decided not to. So Return to Dreamland Deluxe, even though it was my first time finishing the game, I really enjoyed Return to the Dreamland Deluxe. And then number 5 on my honorable mention list is Suika Game. If you don't know what Suika Game is, this is the watermelon game that everybody went crazy over. I put so much time into this game, my girlfriend has put so much time into this game, and while it maybe isn't the greatest game from like a design perspective, it is very addicting, and it's one of my most played games of the year probably, and that's crazy for me because I don't really play puzzle games like this. And then, yeah, number 1 on my list, my top 10 list of my favorite Nintendo Switch games in 2023, to no surprise, is Super Mario Bros. Wonder. I would never consider myself a huge Mario fan. You know, I think I like Zelda more. I like Xenoblade, Fire Emblem. These are franchises I like more than Mario. But Mario Bros. Wonder blew me away in pretty much every possible aspect. With Tears of the Kingdom, I knew it was going to be Breath of the Wild, but better, to an extent, right? But Mario Bros. Wonder was announced in June. We had no real kind of anticipation of what it could be until it was announced, and then from the time it was announced to release, every time they showed the game, I got more and more excited. And I think Mario Wonder, from a design point, is probably one of the most impressive Nintendo games ever, or at least one of the Nintendo games released in the past, couple years, right, that deserves the most praise. Nintendo really went for it. It's easy to forget now that we've all played Mario Wonder, and maybe some people didn't like it as much as others, but it's easy to forget where 2D Mario was before Mario Wonder. The last 2 2D Mario games were games where Nintendo was like, you make it if you're so smart. And I love Mario Maker, but that's what happened. And then before that was the new Super Mario Bros. Franchise, which once again I enjoyed. I think I actually enjoyed that franchise more than most people, but to deny how sterile those games are would just be ignorant. Those games are cookie cutter. I mean, there's no other way to put it. So for them to reevaluate 2D Mario for the past like decade and really hone in on what makes a 2D level and a platformer great, and just amplify that and make, I don't know how many levels are in this game, like, I don't know, 160? I don't even know how many levels, to be honest, are in this game. But however many levels there are, to just make every level stand out and unique and kind of just stand on its own, they completely knocked it out of the park. I think Mario Wonder is one of the best Switch games. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and it completely blew me away, which I think is why I'm placing it above Tears of the Kingdom and Future Redeemed, because I kind of knew what to expect with those games. With Mario Wonder, I had no idea that they were capable of making a 2D Mario game of this quality, of such a refined, polished state, and make it such a great experience. I mean, I didn't know they were capable of doing it. As someone who even likes New Super Mario Bros. U, which most people don't like, even that game, I mean, it's kind of just a 2D Mario game, right? All of those games are just like 2D Mario games. But Mario Wonder is a game that I think will stand the test of time for decades to come, and people will always talk about this game because it is just that good. So that is going to do it for my favorite games of the year, for Switch specifically. Although, to be honest, I didn't play much on other platforms this year. I still haven't finished Final Fantasy 16. I never even got around to starting Resident Evil 4 or Armored Core 6, so frankly, this is, in terms of games released this year, pretty much all I played. I really honed in on my Nintendo energy in 2023, which it was good timing, I guess, because they've released banger after banger. Even some third-party games made the list, which doesn't normally happen, especially not on Switch for me. So for me, 2023 is one of the Switch's best years, if not the best year. 2017 and 2022 would definitely kind of be in that talking point for me, but I am very happy with the games released, and I'm excited for the future. I'm excited to see what Nintendo surprises us with in 2024, be it from first party, but also third parties. I mean, Square Enix has been killing it in my mind as well. Recently, 2 of their Switch games made it to this list, which is just awesome, because I think Square Enix has been doing really great with like those AA games, those lower budget games, if you want to call them that. So I'm excited to see what both Nintendo and Square Enix release. Square Enix definitely has quickly kind of risen the ranks to being like my second favorite publisher, I would say, at this point, next to Nintendo. So I'm excited for the future, but I also want to see what you guys think in the comments down below. What was your favorite Nintendo Switch games in 2023? You don't have to write the full list like I did, but tell me your top 3 maybe, or if you want to do your top 10, let me know. I would love to get a conversation going down in the comments. Of course, subscribe here for more Nintendo Switch reviews, news, coverage, all of this fun stuff. A little bit slower uploads until the new year. I apologize for that, but it's going to be worth the wait, trust me. And follow me on Twitter at BoTalksGames. Until next time, folks, peace.